student, I'm a product of the 1970s, of the anti-Vietnam War, of the student movement that said Southern Africa must be liberated, of the movement that linked up the struggles of Palestine and the struggles of Africa. But my focus mainly was on Southern Africa, working with the liberation movement mainly from South Africa, Zimbabwe, Namibia. Those were the main ones I worked with, but we did connect up with early years of the 74, 75 with the ones from Angola and Mozambique. So I came to Zimbabwe in 1981 to prepare a ZimCode, to help ZimCode, and that's the first time I came to face to face with the challenge of institutional change. Colonial institution, moving on from colonial institution to post-colonial institution, proved very, very difficult. As difficult as other countries in Africa to found them. Partly it's because the ones in there are resisting, and the ones coming in don't know. And if you don't know, the way you learn from the ones who are there. Therefore, the institution reproduces itself. So what I learned in Zimbabwe is that, and I learned it again in South Africa when I worked in South Africa in 94, during the transition of both Namibia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe, which I worked in Zimbabwe 1981 to 82, South Africa in 96 to 2000, and Namibia 91, 92, was that it is very important to change the rules, the systems, because everyone then becomes equalized. The old civil servants and the new ones start learning the rules. But that's like with hindsight. So again, it comes back to the question of institutions. I'm a student of transitions. I was very lucky to participate in the transition from colonial to post-colonial in Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Namibia at very high level, at the government level, because I'd worked with a lot of the people in the liberation movements. And I was also very lucky to participate in the transition of from multi-democracy in Malawi, from Banda to Muluzi, and from Kaunda to Chiluba. I worked in both countries those 1.5 years of critical transition. So by the time I came to the final transition, which I participated in Zimbabwe 2008 and 9 during the GNU, and again 2017, either I become a veteran of transition or I become a jaded old man who didn't understand what to do with transition. But what I've learned about transition is that they are very difficult. And they are difficult fundamentally for two reasons. One is that every transition, it doesn't matter whether it is in America during the War of Independence, to China, to Russia, to Zimbabwe, to South Africa, to Kenya, to wherever transition is taking place, there are always losers and there are winners. And most of us who come in, and suddenly I was young, starry-eyed, postdoctoral graduate coming to Zimbabwe in 1981, having done a bit of work on research in Kenya, I underestimated what that meant for the losers to hang on. And I very quickly disabused of the view that we're all working in the same direction. So that was my first rude awakening. That is, the losers are willing to put a lot of obstacles on the way. The winners, we are so euphoric, we are not watching, we are not really paying attention to the obstacles. So if I was to advise anyone dealing on transition, is that pay attention, especially to the losers. What are they prepared to do to protect what they had? But since you are part of the winners, most of them are the ones who are the winners who are coming in and trying to set up the system. Check your euphoria and remember what Amilcar Cabral said. Never confuse the reality you live in with the ideas in your head, or vice versa, confusing the ideas you have in your head with the reality you live in. Just because I'm euphoric about transition, I'm living in a reality where the people sitting there mostly have not transited. They do not have a transition mindset. So it's a constant struggle between the winners and losers in transition. That, I think, is something I learned both in South Zimbabwe during the transition of 81 to the transition of 2009 to 10 when we have the GNU, and again in 2017 after the transition from the first founding president to the current president. Winners and losers, pay attention to them. The $1 billion US given to Zimbabwe under SDR's IMF allocation is really how we spend it is more important than the amount of money we got. It is the message is sent to his citizens, to his businesses, to international business people, and to the international community, be they bilaterals or multilaterals, that Zimbabwe is spending the money in a way that is restructuring its own economy. It's spending its money in a way that is creating a more inclusive economy. And therefore, just like we said, if you can do mass production, mass consumption, you're increasing the number of people who are benefiting, you're spreading the wealth among the population. That's inclusive growth. If you can do mining and make it transparent and make it accountable, it means that communities, whether they are in wards, local authorities that are mining rights in their mines taking place in their kind of communities, they can say, we want transparency, we want to know where the money was spent and what came back to us and what are we benefiting as a society. Tourism, as I said, Victoria Falls, I don't know whether I was cut off before I talked about it. Victoria Falls, the water never dries up. So people can come and see it, they pay. And if you can figure out our payment systems, Vic Falls is now be declared as a special economic zone. We have Victoria Falls Exchange, which is supposed to be a hard currency exchange. So Zimbabwe can use that between the money they earn from tourism, from mining, from exports to start building almost like a regional financial sector that can actually finance the regional economic development and national economic development. The Great Zimbabwe is a great story. As I said, 1,000 years standing, built by Africans. My ancestors built mud huts in East Africa. They were washed away in one rainy season. So every black person, African around the world, would like to come and see Great Zimbabwe. It's a great story. It's very uplifting for people to feel that, yes, our ancestors were able to build 1,000 years, just like several thousand years, they were able to build pyramids. So those are easy sources of resources once COVID is over in terms of earning revenue. And finally, fintech. Zimbabwe in the 1980s and even to the 90s, even today, Zimbabwe has one of the most advanced financial systems. Never mind what we are doing with the currency. That suggests that you think we don't, but the fact that Zimbabwe can do what it does with its currency tells you the depth of financial strength in terms of design, systems, approaches. We have a very strong system, but we are not tapping into fintech except Econet. And except a few people doing mukuru.com, others kind of getting money across the diaspora. The local fintech industry is too barren. It's too dominated by Econet, EcoCash, and Econet, and therefore is not benefiting from the diversity of what you see in a country like Kenya and Ghana and Nigeria and now in South Africa, in India, where let 1,000 flowers bloom in fintech. Because then we start sorting problems, not just during COVID, but in the new global systems of logistics management. If anyone also asks me, what does Zimbabwe need to take the corner, I'll say address the institutions. Make sure the management, the leadership, the mandates, and accountability are sorted out for institutions. But to do that, make sure the foundation is right. There is consensus as a society what you're going to do. There is political will to carry through some difficult decisions. I think COVID has shown that there is political will to carry out some tough decisions in terms of make sure that although we don't have the money, we will prioritize finding money to make sure COVID vaccines are secured and they are made available. So the political will is available, can be secured, is available. And finally, make the technology available. And here, we are a bit falling behind in terms of the level of technology we have to be able to solve the problems we have. So that's what I would say is where it is. And of course, individuals, we have very smart individuals, consult them, make sure they participate in setting objectives, give them the resources to make sure they implement the objectives and the plans they have, and make sure they have the know-how to make sure that they can actually solve the problems. I think Zimbabwe has a lot going for it if we can just be able to connect the dots. That's my view of it based on what I know about Africa. at least the countries I know in Africa. I don't know whether I answered the question, how can the diaspora respond? I looked at Ethiopia. I arrived there as a bank employee staff. I had no national ID of Ethiopia, so I couldn't get a SIM card. So in generally, things looked like the security situation was very tight. So in terms of understanding, it was seen as a place where there's no democracy. And yet the Ethiopians diaspora were busy investing in Ethiopia. And in a way, the transition you're seeing in Ethiopia, economic performance before the current outbreak of violence, the Chinese infrastructure helped a lot, but it was working on a foundation laid by incredible investments by Ethiopians themselves. They have done the same in Kenya, they have done the same in Nigeria, they've done the same in Ghana, and I think India is also doing the same. So diaspora investments, I know there are many obstacles, but if you ask me how to contribute as citizens, is figuring out how do we invest, not in consumption, but in the production means. How do we invest in making the economy more productive and make sure that we work with others, employ others, create opportunities so that at least we can make sure that we have more level playing field and more inclusive economy. My final comment, which I didn't make last time and I'll make it now, is the political economy of development and politics, economics, and services. And I only want to leave it on this point. We can pursue it if ever I come again on your platform. People say, and a lot view that in Zimbabwe there's a political crisis. Yes, maybe there is. I say we have an economic crisis. We have an economic crisis, but the economic crisis is not really the economic crisis. The economic crisis results because you have a social service delivery crisis. So what happens? I always argue that if people can't get education, they can't get health, they can't get water, they can't get electricity, they can't get food, they are having difficulties and they feel that the macroeconomic and economic framework is denying me to get the things I require. They then get angry. Therefore, the failure in the economy leads to a failure, or difficulties in the economy lead to difficulties in service delivery. Difficulties in service delivery leads to angry citizens. Angry citizens find that one of the outlets of the anger is politics. Therefore, when you say Africa has a political crisis, that is only the manifestation of the underlying causes. The underlying causes is that people are angry because there are no services. There are no services because the economy has failed to perform. And if it performs, it's not performing for the majority, it's only performing for a few. So the solution for us in Africa is to find a way of creating a more economic policies that lead to more inclusive economic growth. So that if the economy grows at 10%, 2% goes to the top 20%, or even 1% goes to the top 20%, and the rest 8% goes to the bottom 80%. Then you are saying every time the economy grows, more growth is going to the people at the bottom than on the top. At the moment across Africa, the growth takes place. There's a disproportionate distribution that most of it goes to the people at the top, and the people at the bottom when the majority gets less. So for me, as somebody who considers himself a political economist, we're actually looking at how to look at the economics, is that we need the economy to grow so that we can provide service to the people, so people get less angry. So our politics changes. It becomes the politics of ideological, how should we do things? What is the state of governance? But not because people are feeling angry because they didn't get services. Because I think, to me, in Africa, that's one of the biggest drivers. But that's my theory of it. Please poke holes in it. Let's have a discussion of it. I hope I provoke enough people to tell me I have no idea what I'm talking about, and I'm happy to engage and see whether we can actually make it for a better dialogue amongst ourselves in terms of how we're going to drive Africa, and in this case, Zimbabwe, to a country where citizens feel it's a place they can grow, raise their children, and grow old. And I thank you.